Vanakkam. Hello friends. We have been attempting to determine the time period of the emergence of the rule of the Moovendars in ancient Tamilnadu, looking at references in Sangam poems and Tolhapiyam and correlating them to archaeological findings and inscriptional evidences from ancient Tamilnadu. We have also been seeing how urbanization in the deep south happened contemporaneously with the second urbanization in the north, and this was around the time period of the emergence of the rule of the great three, the Cheras, the Cholas and the Pandyas. In this context, it will be interesting to note the 10 criteria of urbanization laid down by the famous archaeologist Gordon Childe in the early part of the 20th century. Childe worked with the Institute of Archaeology, London, and was one of the earliest proponents of cultural history archaeology. The first criteria is large settlements with some degree of internal planning. We have seen how large settlements evolved in port centers and markets and industrial and commercial areas starting right from the Iron Age, and how archaeological findings in places like Ambal in Nagapatnam and Kodumanal in Erode district have thrown up industrial centers. Next come defenses encircling settlements. We have seen several references from Sangam poems as well as archaeological relics that show how the ancient rulers had hilly territories where they had their fortresses surrounding their settlements. Here is an interesting reference of how a fortress wall looks like, described in Madurai Kanji by the poet Mangudi Marudanar. உயர்ந்தோங்கிய நிறைப்புதவின் நெடுமதில் நிறைஞாயில் அம்புமிழ் அயிலிருப்ப. The long and broad and tall fortress walls, atop which there were facilities to store weapons of war and where there were several structures from which the soldiers could take vantage positions and attack the approaching enemies. Next come public architecture and the use of mud and fire bricks. We saw how as the settlements in ports and markets grew in size, there was necessity to create brick architecture and infrastructure, and indeed excavations in places like Kiradi have thrown beautiful brick structures that are akin to the standards set by the Indus Valley civilization itself. Next is a distinct ceramic style. The black and red ware pottery was the distinct ceramic style of the deep south and could be correlated to urbanization, much like the northern black polished ware, the NPBW pottery in the north, that is correlated to urbanization. Next comes the highly developed crafts and industries. We have seen in detail about several production centers like the Pasi Mede discovered in the Porundal Hills in Palani and the bead manufacturing units at Kodumanal, which finds mention in Sangam poems as Kodumanam, and how there were lapidaries to process precious stones brought from very long distances, such as the lapis lazuli that was brought from the regions of today's Afghanistan, thus proving that there was long distance trade. The findings of spindle whorls in almost all the ancient excavation sites shows that the textile industry was also well established, and to show how highly evolved the industry was, here goes a poem sung by Vadama Vannakkan Perinjathanar on the Chola king Malayaman Tirumudikari. The poem goes, Paruthi Pendin Panuvali Anna Neruppu Sinandhaninda Ninanthayangu Kolungurai Paruvookan Mandayodu Ool Maaru Peyara Unhum Endai Nir Kaanguvadisine. Here the poet sings, the well-cooked flesh of the meat that the king serves him is as soft as the fine cotton that is woven by the cotton women, the Paruthi Pendir. Yet another reference in Pornaratrupadai shows the exquisite weaving patterns that were popular even in that long gone era. In the Pornaratrupadai that sings the praise of the Chola king Karihala Peruvalathan, sung by the lady poetess Mudadama Kanniyar, Nokku Nulai Kalla Nunmaya Pookanindu Arava Uriyanna Aruvai Nalhi. He gave me clothing that was full of flower designs, and so thin was the fabric that it reminded me of the shedded skin of a snake, and so fine was the weave that I could hardly make out the thread. Next comes the uniform system of weights and measures and certain traits of material culture like the use of copper and punch-marked coins. We have seen how paddy was the common medium of exchange in those days, and there are references in Sangam poetry as to how the people of the littoral region, the Neithal people, the Womanar, exchanged salt for paddy, and of how the Aichir from the Mullai regions exchanged butter and curds for paddy. In his book, A History of South India from Prehistoric Times to Vijayanagara, the historian Nilaganda Sastri points out how barter was a common medium of trade for a very long time in the Tamil country, and in some pockets right up to the 19th century one could find the same. While in Kiradi, stones have been found that must have been common weight systems as found in the Indus Valley civilization. In the barter economy, there were measures of paddy known by the terms such as ma and veli that were definitely standardized measurements. The phenomenal fertility of the Kaveri basin that laid the foundation for the Chola Empire is celebrated in several poems. Here again, in the Porunaratrupade, Mudadamakanniyar sings, Sali Nellin Siraikol Veli Ayiram Vilayuttaga Kaveri Purakkum Nadu Kilavone. Fertile paddy is cultivated in the basin of the river Kaveri in thousands of veli, that must have been a measurement of land. Yet another line goes, Vollena Thirai Piraliya Irum Bavvathu Karai Soolnda Ahan Kidakkai Mamavin Vayin Nel. Here, ma refers again to a common measure. Nilaganda Sastri also points out how in the Pandya regions, a colony of foreign settlers appear to have regularly used copper coins for their day-to-day transactions. So even in those days of barter, coins were also in usage. We have also seen how several hoards of Roman coins have been excavated in different sites in Tamil country as a result of trade with the early Roman Empire. Child next mentions the development of hydraulic systems, and we have seen in detail about how the rulers created irrigation and water management systems that aided in surplus production, that in turn laid the very foundation for their rule. The 10th and final criteria is the written script. While inscriptions on pottery that have been found in all the excavated sites in Tamilnadu attest to the widespread literacy among the common people, we saw how words, especially nouns from Pali and Prakrit and Sanskrit, entered the Tamil country through trade exchanges with the north and with the arrival of the priestly class. And we saw how Tolgapiyam provided for the absorption of these foreign words into the Tamil language. Suthiram 4 of Yechaviyal in Tolgapiyam Solladhiharam gives the definition of the term Tisaichol. Sendamil சேர்ந்த பன்னிரு நிலத்தும் தங்குறிப்பெனவே திசைச்சொற் கிளவி. Here the term kilavi means sol, a word, and Tisaichol refers to the words that came from neighboring regions and entered the Tamil language. And we must remember that all these provisions given in Yechaviyal apply only to nouns and not verbs. Tisai meaning direction, Sendamil சேர்ந்த பன்னிரு நிலத்தும் refers to 12 linguistic divisions, which includes the Sendamil Nadu as well. Several commentators who came way later, almost 1,000 years later, have tried to interpret this Sendamil Nilam and have enlisted the names of the regions. Though there are a few differences amidst them, generally the 12 regions are taken as Tenpandi Nadu, Kudanadu, Kuttanadu, Karkanadu, Venadu, Pulli Nadu, Pandri Nadu, Aruva Nadu, Aruva Vadadalai Nadu, Sida Nadu, Malay Nadu and Punal Nadu. What is interesting is that Tolgapiyam recognized linguistic divisions of land and provided for the admixture of words from neighboring dialects 2600 years before present. And one territory on which all the commentators are in agreement is with the Sendamil Nadu itself, which is the Pandi Nadu, where Mother Tamil was nurtured on the banks of the river Vaigai and the Tan Porunai, the cool Porunai that we today know as the Tamarabarani. In his book Chiefdoms of the Sangam Age, K.D. Trinavakarasu has tried to identify all the 12 regions enlisted with the rulers. In the case of the Great Three, Punal Nadu is generally taken as denoting the Chola Nadu, Punal meaning water, the abundance of the Kaveri river, Ka plus Viri, Ka meaning forest in Tamil, the great river that ran dividing the forest lands, and the Sanskritized version that came later and we know today is Kaveri. Dr. Tirunavakarasu points out how traditionally the Chola country is taken to be the land between the two rivers on the north and south that go by the same name, Vellaru. The territory south of the Chola kingdom belonged to the Pandyas, the Tamilnadu. Kudanadu was the northern part of the Chera territory identified with Coorg in Karnataka, and Kuttanadu was southern Chera country identified with the Cochin and Trivandrum districts. If we were to take a couple of more examples, Karkanadu refers to the land of mountains and groves and is generally identified with the regions called Konkanam in Tamil Sangam classics, and this is identified with the help of Kannada inscriptions as belonging to the southwestern part of today's Karnataka. Venadu is generally believed to be the land ruled by the Velir, the Vales, which was in the Kanyakumari district. Sandwiched between Kollam and Athankodu, Venadu was on the borderlands of the Chera and Pandya kingdoms. Tolkappiyam having defined these regions on linguistic basis, the very fact that people speaking specific dialects and languages were identified with a specific region and not as the land under the rule of a Vendan or a chieftain goes to prove the settled way of life that should have been established by then. While all the information that we have seen so far confer with the 10 criteria for urbanization laid down by Child, though being an early proponent of cultural history archaeology, Child has not given any criteria to assess the cultural components of urbanization. There are umpteen number of references in the Sangam works that point to the highly evolved lifestyle of the people as well as the nobility of thought that were the hallmarks of Tamil society. For example, we have been seeing references from Porunaraattupadai, and we know that there are many collections of Aattupadai in the Sangam works. Basically, Aattupadai, showing the way, refers to a bard who has received a gift from a generous patron, guiding his fellow bards towards the patron. Such was the magnanimity of thought. Here is a very interesting poem that has a quaint reference to a lifestyle of the people. In the Purananuru song 82 titled Oosi Vehamum Por Vehamum, sung again on Koperu Narkilli by the poet Saathandayar, சாறுதலை கொண்டென பெண்ணீற்று உற்றென பட்டமாரி ஞான்ற ஞாயிற்று கட்டில் நினக்கும் இழிசனன் கையது goes the poem. The poet is referring to the work of an Irisinan, maybe belonging to the Pulayar caste people who worked with leather, of how in a house in a town, he is readying a cot with leather straps on a wooden frame, showing that people were using cots in those days. Yet another mark of an evolved lifestyle concurrent with urbanization that must have been ushered in, no doubt, with the beginning of the rule of the Great Three. So, from when and where and how did the rule of the three emerge? The Cheras, the Cholas, the Pandyas. Who came first? We will explore these in the coming episodes. Vanakkam.